Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
Wasn't that a beautiful title sequence?
I think it was pretty cool.
I do think it was composed very well. Oh! Welcome to Borough Bugs, our very own show!
In this show, we're going to be researching some London boroughs and telling you what you may be able to find in the boroughs, such as transport, landmarks, and any other places or facts of note.
Hello, my name's Zach. I'm a little blue butterfly.
Hi, my name's Vinbee. I'm a little, pink bumblebee.
And this is Borough Bugs.
Is that it?
What?
Are we not going to mention anything else?
Oh yes, we have this red button here, which will allow us to choose the borough from our wall of boroughs.
To start off, we'll be covering all of the boroughs in inner London.
And what's a better place to start than one of the most famous boroughs in London?
Yes, the London Borough of Westminster is one of the busiest London boroughs, with tourists from all over the world flocking to see the sights of the beloved capital city.
So the borough we're, of course, going to talk about today is... Westminster!
Ooh.
The London Borough of Westminster has many landmarks, which is why so many tourists come to this part of London.
But it also has some very obscure and calmer areas which not many people visit.
I love obscure areas. Shall we go and learn more about this borough?
Of course! Let's go!
See how many people are in the more central areas of the borough, rather than places like Pimlico or Little Venice.
Yeah, everyone wants to see the landmarks rather than get some peace and quiet in the more obscure areas.
Speaking of landmarks...
That's Big Ben right there.
Actually, the tower is called the Elizabeth Tower. Big Ben's just the bell. This whole bit is the Palace of Westminster, also known as the Houses of Parliament. This place is where the British government writes up all of the laws that we have to abide by.
What if I were to break one?
Let's not find out, shall we?
There's so many people here.
I suppose a lot of people are excited to see such a big clock, aren't they?
I mean, it's one of the main landmarks of London.
True. Big Ben also didn't go ding dong for a while because they were renovating the tower, and now that it's all finished, Big Ben is once again ringing for all of central London to hear.
That's Westminster Abbey.
Yep, 40 coronations have taken place here for all of the British monarchs who have come and gone. It was founded over 1,000 years ago.
Wow, it's that old?
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much history the city has. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's Westminster we're covering today.
Hey, wait. Aren't there dead people here?
Oh yes, a bit of grim history here. This place is the resting place of all of the monarchs that have ruled over the UK, as well as some famous people, such as Charles Darwin himself.
Pretty morbid stuff, honestly.
This is Piccadilly Circus, one of the busiest road junctions in London.
That's a massive screen.
Oh yes, that right there is called Piccadilly Lights. It's a 110-year-old wall which shows loads of adverts.
110 years?
Yep, although it wasn't always a screen. Back in the 1900s, it was solely electric billboards. It didn't become a screen until 1998, when they switched to projectors. And then in 2011, they started using LED lights, which are what we now see today.
Look at all those adverts. Oh, they're making me want to buy stuff.
Vinbee, focus.
Sorry.
But it is relevant, because our next destination is one of the busiest shopping areas in central London.
Yeah, just up the road from here is Oxford Street.
There's loads of clothes shops here.
Wow, imagine the prices of everything in these shops. What shops do they have here?
One of the most noteworthy shops here is Selfridges, which was named the world's best department store in 2010 and in 2012. There's also Hamleys, the world's largest toy shop.
Ooh, that's Buckingham Palace. The king lives there, right?
Ding ding! Right answer. This place is the headquarters of the royal family.
God save our gracious king!
Please don't start singing.
Sorry, can we go inside Buckingham Palace?
No, but 12 people in the past have actually tried to.
Well, I'll be the 13th!
Don't do that. This here is Leicester Square, one of the more popular areas for tourists.
Is that M&M's World?
Uh-huh, the largest sweet store in the world. Fancy anything to eat?
Actually, I do fancy something sugary.
Well, maybe later. We're doing this.
Oh.
Another thing here is Chinatown. The road signs here have additional Mandarin text, because of course, it's Chinatown.
What's actually in Chinatown?
Well, when you get there, you're greeted by a massive gate, which was built in 2016 on Wardour Street. Once you enter, you'll see lots of different Asian restaurants, as well as gift shops selling all sorts of stuff. There's also loads of red lanterns hanging all around, making it a truly beautiful scene. This is Hyde Park, one of London's many royal parks.
Isn't it the biggest one?
No, the biggest in London is Richmond Park, but let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
This place has a lake, doesn't it?
Yes, the Serpentine and the Long Water. By this lake is the memorial for Princess Diana.
Rest in peace.
And on the western end of the park, there's another body of water. This one is called Round Pond. I'm not joking, that's the actual name of the pond.
Isn't Winter Wonderland held here?
Yep, the annual Christmas Wonderland Fair is held here from November to January. Honestly, I'd love to go, but have you seen how expensive it is?
It's only £5.
Wait, seriously? Have I been gaslit into thinking it's like £12?
Probably.
And here's one of my favourite places, the London Transport Museum.
You can walk through and see the history of London's transports all the way back to the 1830s.
I love this place so much. This museum lies in Covent Garden and is about a 3-minute walk from the tube station.
The shop is so colourful.
I could stay here for hours.
Until the shop has to close.
No matter, I'm a tiny insect. They'll never notice me.
For the record, we don't condone staying in shops after they close. Did you see how many people were at those landmarks?
Yeah, I don't know how you can move through so many people.
People from all over the world think the places to see in Westminster are so interesting. And what's another interesting part of Westminster and London as a whole?
Oh, I know where this is going. The transport!
Of course, we have to start off with Westminster Station, right?
Yep. Westminster Station is of course one of the main stations of the Borough of Westminster, with the Circle, District and Jubilee lines. Let's see how many stations the other tube lines have here. We'll be showing this on our Transport for London tally. Well, it seems that the Circle line has the most stations in this borough, at 12 stations.
And the Metropolitan line has only a measly 2 stations. How sad.
It's also worth noting that Westminster also has some of the London terminus stations.
There's London Marylebone, London Paddington, London Victoria, and London Charing Cross.
Each of them connects to different parts of the UK. Marylebone has Chiltern, Victoria has Southern, Charing Cross has South Eastern, and Paddington has Great Western. Victoria also has the Gatwick Express, a fast train which goes from Victoria all the way to Gatwick Airport, and Paddington has the Heathrow Express, which is also a fast train, but this one goes to the more famous London Heathrow Airport. You can also get the Elizabeth line from Paddington, which is a new heavy rail service which stretches from southeast and northeast London all the way to Berkshire. Wow!
Westminster is also home to plenty of London buses, but surprisingly, there's only one bus station in the entirety of the borough, Victoria Bus Station.
I honestly thought there'd be more bus stations in a borough such as this, but apparently not. I suppose there are too many historic buildings here, so there'd be no space for any other bus stations.
A much larger station for road vehicles exists at Victoria, however, that being Victoria Coach Station, which is the main hub for coaches going in and out of London.
Most of the stations in Westminster are in Fare Zone 1, the main fare zone for Transport for London services. There are some exceptions, with 4 stations being in Fare Zone 2, St John's Wood, Royal Oak, Maida Vale, and Warwick Avenue.
Does the tube here have any history?
Absolutely! One of the stations in the north of the borough has the most history to it, that being Baker Street, mainly the Hammersmith and City and Circle Line platforms, which is the oldest part of the tube network, dating all the way back to the opening date of the London Underground, the 10th of January 1863.
Over 160 years old? It's amazing to think this train service is still running to this day.
Yep, it stretched from Paddington to Farringdon. All the stations on the first ever tube line are still visible to this day. Some of these stations have gone through many refurbishments over the years, but some hints of history are still able to be seen today at some stations.
There's some abandoned stations here too.
Oh yes, it wouldn't be London without some hidden London, would it? One of the most famous examples of an abandoned station is Aldwych on the Piccadilly line. It closed on the 30th of September 1994 due to low passenger numbers and the cost of replacing the lifts. Another good example is the Jubilee line platforms of Charing Cross, which closed on the 19th of November 1999 when the Jubilee line was extended to Stratford. Both of these stations are actually used as popular filming locations for films.
Some other stations which are now abandoned or closed include Marlborough Road and Lords, both on the Metropolitan line, and both closed on the same day, the 19th of November 1939. This was due to St John's Wood opening not too far from these two stations, which used to be on the Bakerloo line, but is now on the Jubilee line.
And there is, of course, Down Street, which is also on the Piccadilly line. The station closed on the 21st of May 1932 due to low passenger numbers, and also the nearby Green Park and Hyde Park Corner stations had newer entrances built near to the station, so the station essentially became obsolete.
It's not just abandoned stations, some stations never even got opened.
That's right, just like our old friend Aldwych here, while it did open on the Piccadilly line, it was originally going to be part of the then Jubilee line, known then as the Fleet line. It was originally going to be part of Phase 2 of the line, which was approved in 1971, but as we all know, this never went through, and the plan to extend the Fleet line to Aldwych was officially abandoned forever in 1989, and the Jubilee line instead extended to Stratford.
Plenty more stations were planned and not built, but there's too many, so we won't cover them all.
Are there any more modes of transport in Westminster?
There is the River Bus service, which is a boat service going across the entire River Thames in London.
The piers which you can disembark at in Westminster are of course Westminster Pier, as well as Millbank Pier and Embankment Pier.
And I think that's everything to do with transport.
Wow, loads to speak about, but we're not done just yet. It's now time for the last section of the show, Trivia!
Boring.
Yep, good. The Westminster you know today was originally made up of 3 different metropolitan boroughs, those being Westminster, Paddington and St Marylebone. The Old Westminster gained city status on the 29th of October 1900, officially calling the Old Metropolitan Borough the City of Westminster.
Westminster would not become part of the Greater London we know and love today until 1965, when the London Government Act of 1963 was enacted and the old metropolitan boroughs merged, creating a brand new Westminster, and its city status was transferred to the new Westminster.
1 year later, in 1966, Westminster gained its own Lord Mayor, Sir Charles Norton. As of 2024, the Lord Mayor of Westminster right now is Robert Rigby.
Westminster's population in 1801 was at 220,000. If we fast forward more than 200 years to 2011, the population count has decreased by about 1,000. In fact, Westminster's population is a bit all over the place if you look at the past hundreds of years.
As shown earlier, Westminster is served by 27 tube stations, and it would be a perfect place to go and ride all of the tube lines, except one line is missing from this borough, the Waterloo and City line, which is so small and underutilised that it's a laugh it's considered a tube line at all.
In 2020, Westminster installed 500 electric charging points on lampposts all around the city, and as of 2024, there are over 2,000 of these charging points.
When trams were around in central London, they never really entered Westminster, nor the neighbouring borough of Kensington and Chelsea, mainly because the people here considered the trams too low class.
Westminster, despite its extremely high cost of living and massively expensive housing, has the cheapest council tax in the entirety of London.
Most of you probably already know this, but Paddington Bear is named after the actual station, Paddington.
No, the station was named after the bear.
No, the bear was named after the station.
Nope.
Yes.
Nope.
Yes.
Nuh-uh.
Yes!
No.
We would like to formally apologise for the reckless display you have witnessed.
We were just being sillies.
We have resolved this privately and concluded that Paddington Bear is indeed named after the station.
I still think the station was named after the bear.
Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
Do you know what I could go for right now? Some food.
Did you have, nothing to eat this morning?
I'd never eat breakfast.
Well, you probably should. Anyway, welcome to Borough Bugs, the show where we take a look at each London borough and explain all of the landmarks, transport links, and any other interesting pieces of information.
Hello, my name's Vinbee, and I skip breakfast on the regular.
Hello, my name's Zach, and I'm concerned about Vinbee's lack of breakfast. And this is Borough Bugs. No wonder you're hungry if you skip your breakfast.
Well, today's borough has a market which serves lots of street food, right?
Oh, yeah! Camden Market has a huge range of restaurants and food stalls, catering to all types of people. Hot dogs, roasts, pizza, burgers, almost anything.
So, today's borough is none other than... Camden!
Ooh!
Can we move on from the market, please? I'm getting hungrier.
Well, maybe if you didn't skip breakfast, you wouldn't be hungry.
Okay, yeah.
Anyways, on to the overview. Camden's quite posh, isn't it?
Some parts are, especially Bloomsbury.
I don't know what it is about it, but Camden always makes me feel, posh.
Never do that again.
Sorry. Is my poshness bothering you?
Please, just go to the landmark segment. Oh no, we're starting with this one?
Yep, this is Camden Market, somewhere where Vinbee needs to go.
I'm just hungry, okay?
Sorry, I'm just messing about.
Camden Market has loads of things to do, such as all of the food stalls mentioned earlier. There's also lots of shops here. Clothes shops, souvenir shops, jewellery shops, you name it.
They also hold plenty of events here, some being themed around holidays, and some to just let loose and have fun.
There's also a lot of places for leisure, such as mini golf, darts, and bowling.
Bowling! Can we go?
As much as I'd love to, we've got to cover the rest of Camden. This is the British Museum.
Oh, British Museum, innit? Lovely jubbly. Lots of great British artefacts. Cushy.
Don't do the accents again.
Fine. Anyways, the British Museum has a large collection of very un-British items, including but not limited to Egyptian mummies, Parthenon sculptures, and the lion hunt of Ashurbanipal.
Bless you.
There are some British items here, such as the Sutton Hoo helmet. The museum only gets away with being called the British Museum, as the nations these items originated from were a part of the British Empire.
So, some stuff here is stolen?
Pretty much. This is the Regent's Park, not Regent's Park the suburb. I'm talking about the Royal Park itself.
Isn't the Regent's Park in Westminster, though?
Yes, but we didn't cover it in the Westminster episode, and part of it runs through Camden, along with Regent's Canal, so we can get away with doing it in this episode. Hooray!
London Zoo is also here.
It is, but that's in Westminster, so we'll just mention it quickly here. London Zoo is also known as ZSL. This name is still mentioned on the London Underground.
This is Regent's Park. Exit here for local buses to ZSL, London Zoo.
Next to the Regent's Park is a smaller park, Primrose Hill.
Is this one a royal park too?
No, but it is managed by them. Interesting fact about Primrose Hill actually, there used to be a railway station exclusively for Primrose Hill, but it closed in 1992. More on that later though. This is the British Library. Built in 1973, it is one of the largest libraries in the world.
This library has millions of books, including some written things which date as far back as 2000 BC.
So, if you fancy something as dull as a library, this place is right for you.
Can you just walk into the British Library?
Most areas have free entry, but if you want to go to the reading rooms or any of the exhibitions, you'll need a reader pass.
I see. We could just sneak in though, we are insects after all.
Let's not. This is Hampstead Heath. Unlike the Regent's Park, this one isn't a royal park, like Primrose Hill, but it is the site of the highest
point in London! I actually went there myself. Here's a photo of me at the top.
Thanks for interrupting me, but yeah. The summit of Parliament Hill at Hampstead Heath is the highest point in London at 134 metres, or 440 feet.
You can see all across Hampstead Heath from the top, and you'll also be able to see several famous landmarks within London, such as the Gherkin, the London Eye, the Shard, and the BT Tower. You can even see as far as Canary Wharf.
Not only that far, but also as far as Crystal Palace. Incredible! Although it is a pain to walk up the hill.
Oh really, Zach? The steep hill is difficult to climb up. We can fly!
Well, sometimes it's good to get the exercise, just like how you need breakfast.
Zach! That felt quite short, honestly.
Yeah, this may be a thing for some boroughs where there won't be as many landmarks to talk about, but hey, better than nothing.
A lot of other landmarks here are theatres. If we covered one, then we'd have to cover the rest. So, in order to make sure they aren't left out, here's the names of all theatres in Camden, including performing arts centres and music venues in alphabetical order, on screen now.
Well, now with that... Oh, get this text out of my face! Well, now with that out of the way, literally, time for transport!
Is there a definitive Camden station?
Well, there is a Camden Town Tube Station, which is on the Northern Line, as well as Camden Road Station on the London Overground Mildmay Line, which used to be a part of National Rail before the London Overground came along. Out of the two stations, though, I think Camden Town is more noteworthy.
Let's bring down the TfL tally to show how many other stations each line has. Well, what a fall from grace the Circle Line has had. It's in last place, tied with the Central and Hammersmith and City lines, all with 2 stations each.
While the Northern Line has risen to first place with 10 stations in total, with the Overground being a close second.
One thing to consider now is that the Overground lines each have their own name now.
Yep, so to make things a bit fairer, let's count the stations for the individual London Overground lines as well. Well, Mildmay has the most with 6, and the Suffragette line has the least with 1.
Camden is also home to some London terminus stations.
There's London King's Cross, London St Pancras International, and London Euston.
London St Pancras International is notable for being the only terminus station with international rail services, as St Pancras is the home of the Eurostar, which is a high-speed rail network which goes to mainland Europe.
St Pancras is also home to HS1, a high-speed variant of South Eastern, which heads through Stratford International and then on to Ebbsfleet and various other places in Kent. It's also served by East Midlands Railway.
Through services for Thameslink also run through St Pancras Pancras, and as well as that, King's Cross is the terminus for Thameslink services to and from Cambridge and Peterborough, and it's also the terminus for London North Eastern Railway, Grand Central, Great Northern, Hull Trains and Lumo.
London Euston is served by the London Overground Lioness Line, as well as London North Western Railway and Avanti West Coast. Euston is also served by the Caledonian Sleeper, which is an overnight sleeper service which runs all the way up to Aberdeen.
Just like Westminster, Camden is home to only one bus station, Euston Bus Station, which is situated just outside of the mainline station.
Camden stations are all either in fare zones 1 or 2, the exception being Hampstead, which is a zone 2/3 station.
Let's explain this. There's lots of examples of tube stations being in more than one fare zone. Each fare zone charges you a certain amount of money when you travel to it. If a station is in more than one fare zone, it will charge you a certain amount depending on the direction you travel in.
If you're looking for any historical stations, look no further. London Euston is the oldest station in the borough of Camden. It opened on the 20th of July 1837, marking it as the first intercity railway station in London. However, the station was rebuilt in the 1960s, so pretty much all of Euston's original architecture is gone. That isn't saying the new station is anything bad, far from it. The departure board of Euston has recently been replaced from a yellow dot matrix display to an LED display. Say what you want about these new departure boards, but they're honestly so much easier to read.
If there are historical mainline stations, is there any history with the tube? Are there any abandoned stations?
You could say that. The British Museum originally had a tube station of its own. It used to be on the Central Line until it closed on the 24th of September 1933. This was due to the opening of the Central Line platforms at Holborn Station. This meant that the British Museum station became useless, resulting in its closure. Nowadays, the station is used to store materials for track maintenance, and a building society is now where the station building used to be.
There's also South Kentish Town, which used to be on the Northern Line. It closed on the 5th of June 1924, and the reason why it was closed is quite unique.
Yep, the station was originally only meant to be temporarily closed, due to strike action at the nearby Lots Road power station. After the strike was finished and the power was restored, they decided to not reopen South Kentish Town. The reason being the station had really low passenger numbers. They were so low that trains weren't even stopping there sometimes. They just go right through it.
Imagine how annoyed you'd be that the train just decides to not stop at the station because nobody used it.
Yeah, it'd be annoying to the 5 people who were using it.
Oh yeah, earlier we mentioned Primrose Hill Station. Let's discuss that now. The station was opened in 1852, then closed between 1915 and 1917, and then reopened again in 1922. And for the 70 years it operated since then, it was only served during peak hours.
The station was originally part of the Watford Junction to Liverpool Street service on the North London Line when it was part of Network South East. The service lasted from 1986 to 1992. When that ended, along with it went Primrose Hill Station, resulting in its closure on the 22nd of September 1992. The platform buildings were demolished in 2008, and the line nowadays is mostly part of the London Overground.
And finally, Swiss Cottage Station used to be on the Metropolitan Line, very close to 2 no longer existing tube stations, Marlborough Road and Lords, which we discussed in the previous episode. Swiss Cottage eventually opened on the Bakerloo line, which is now part of the Jubilee line, and it existed as an interchange to the Metropolitan line station. The station was eventually closed on the 17th of August 1940 as a wartime measure, and it never reopened.
And I believe that's everything.
Should we move on to trivia now?
I thought you said it was boring.
Go to trivia! Camden was composed of 3 metropolitan boroughs, which were St Pancras, Hampstead and Holborn. When the boroughs merged in 1965, they decided to name the borough after the man who started the development of Camden Town in the 1790s, Charles Pratt, 1st Earl Camden. And that's how Camden got its name.
As mentioned earlier, HS1 terminates here in Camden at St Pancras. Camden is also set to be the terminus of the new HS2, which is set to terminate at London Euston.
Camden includes none other than the University of London, one of the oldest universities in the UK, which is located in Fitzrovia.
Camden has nearly 2,000 listed buildings, making it the borough with the second highest number of them. First place is Westminster with 4,000 because of course it is.
In 2012, Camden Council commissioned these benches, which have been dubbed Camden Benches. They were designed to prevent people from sleeping on it, as well as littering on it, graffitiing it, and several other things.
In 2007, TfL proposed a new tram system running through London, the Cross River Tram. It would have started in Camden Town and worked its way down to Brixton, south of the River Thames. But unfortunately, the tram was stopped in its tracks by then Mayor of London, Boris Johnson. And it's a shame, because I would love to see another tram service in London.
Yeah, London is doing fine with the one tram service we have down in Croydon, but we're not there yet, so that's a story for another time.
Well, I suppose that's all for the London Borough of Camden.
So much stuff to talk about, but I'm still hungry.
Well, why don't we go to Camden Market? Remember, they sell food.
Oh yeah!
Tell you what, we'll go to Camden Market and we can get something to eat there.
Can we go to Westminster and get something from M&M's World too? I'm still waiting on my sugary fix.
We'll see. No guarantees, though.
Yes!
Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
Recently, we've received a letter from a completely real fan of the show.
You wrote that yourself, didn't you?
The letter reads, Dear Zach, how come you have Vinbee on a show about London? She is very clearly from the Midlands. Her accent gives it away.
Trust me, I wish it wasn't like that.
Same. Anyways, welcome to Borough Bugs, the show where we research all about the interesting things within all 32 London boroughs.
Hello, I'm Vinbee, and I'm genuinely really jealous that you live in London, Zach.
And I'm Zach, and that's not my problem. And this is Borough Bugs.
I'm just tired of living in the north, you know. The internet out in the countryside is as slow as dial-up.
I wish you could be closer to London as well. It would make sense, as we're Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Which reminds me, there's a London borough which also has an "and" in it.
Oh yeah, Kensington and Chelsea. This borough was the first one to have two place names in its name, and the history about its name is rather interesting.
So, without further ado, today's borough is Kensington and Chelsea.
Ooh.
Kensington and Chelsea's full name is the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, a bit like how Westminster is officially known as the City of Westminster.
Just like how we have full names, Zach Atwood and Vinbee Langley.
Your last name is Langley?
Yep.
Huh. Kensington and Chelsea is one of the more pretentious boroughs of London.
Ironic, considering Kensington and Chelsea is the smallest London borough. KNC's total amount of land is 4.68 square miles, or 12.1 square kilometres.
Wow, with such little space, it's a wonder how they managed to cram all of the museums into the borough.
Speaking of which, let's talk about them now. South Kensington is where most people go to see the museums, located on the appropriately named Exhibition Road in South Kensington.
There are 3 major museums in South Kensington. We're not going to cover them individually as that will take quite a bit, so here they are in a short list.
The Natural History Museum,
The Science Museum,
and the Victoria and Albert Museum.
There's a lot more museums here other than these 3, but these are the more well-known ones.
To get to these museums, you'll have to walk through an incredibly long walkway at South Kensington Tube Station.
It's not a fun walk, but once you exit the tunnel, you'll be at the museums.
Which museum is your favourite, Zach?
Oh, I quite like the Science Museum. They have lots of funny contraptions in there.
That's my favourite as well!
Awesome! Oh, by the way, entry to all museums here are free! This is Harrods, one of the world's most famous department stores. It was founded in 1849.
Harrods is 20,000 square metres big, and it has 7 individual floors of selling space, equaling about 90,000 square metres, which is over 1 million square feet, making it the biggest department store in Europe.
Wow! And with all that space, the shop has a total of 330 individual departments, selling a huge range of products, services, and almost anything you could think of, as well as a food hall.
They also have a seasonal Christmas department, because who doesn't love Christmas shops?
Oh, I know I do. Also, Harrods has its own motto.
Omnibus ubique?
It's actually Omnia Omnibus Ubique, which is Latin for all things for all people everywhere.
Oh, I didn't know you spoke Latin, Zach.
I don't. This is Portobello Road.
Wow, we've run out of landmarks and we're resorting to roads?
No. This one's a notable road. Portobello Road is home to none other than Portobello Road Market. This market is usually open on weekends.
The market area is almost a kilometre in length, being around 940 metres in length, or 1,028 yards. So it's quite a trek if you plan to walk the whole length.
Markets bore me to death, so I don't plan on walking through here anytime soon.
Well, you could use a bit of exercise, Zach.
This one isn't really a landmark, but it occurs throughout Kensington.
The Notting Hill Carnival is an event which is led by the British Caribbean community. It began on the 30th of January 1959 when they held an indoor Caribbean carnival.
This was a response to racial abuse in the UK around that time, and the event was broadcasted by the BBC. Nowadays, the carnival averages around 2 million attendees, with around 40,000 volunteers.
The event takes place every year towards the end of August, and in 2006, Notting Hill Carnival was voted onto a list of icons of England.
Of course, when you have a show about several aspects of London, there's obviously going to be some things which aren't very light-hearted.
Some things may include disasters or other serious events which happen somewhere.
Which is why this part of the episode will be dedicated to a subject which may be a rather serious one.
We have to discuss Grenfell Tower in North Kensington.
This tower was the site of one of the worst residential fires in the UK since the Second World War. On the 14th of June 2017, a fire broke out at around 1 o'clock in the morning, and the fire lasted for a whole 24 hours before finally being fully extinguished after 60 hours.
The fire was caused by faulty electrical wiring in a refrigerator on the 4th floor of the tower, and it spread due to the insulation of the building's windows, which were made of a combustible foam, which means that it was incredibly flammable.
A total of 70 people died at the scene, and the whole incident left more than 70 people injured, and 223 people managed to escape.
The tower is currently covered in scaffolding and a protective wrap, with a message at the top saying, "Grenfell, forever in our hearts." Recently, the UK government has announced that the building is to be demolished at some point in the near future. As long as it's still standing as of now, it reminds the people of London and the UK of the disaster.
We apologise if that last bit was a serious subject.
Sometimes there'll be topics in this show that may be of a serious subject, and we'll try to explain it in the best way possible.
We do try to keep a silly and fun vibe for this show, but sometimes there'll be times when we have to do this. We don't know how often this will happen. This could just be for this episode only, so there's a fair warning.
I feel like now that we've made our point clear, shall we continue with the rest of the programme?
I feel like we should. We have several other bits to talk about. There are a total of 3 stations in the borough named after Kensington, but interestingly, there are no stations named after Chelsea.
South Kensington, High Street Kensington, and Kensington Olympia. There's also West Kensington, but that is, in fact, not in K&C, so we aren't counting it.
All of these stations are on the District Line. High Street Kensington is on both the Circle and District lines, and South Kensington is on the Circle, District, and Piccadilly lines.
Kensington Olympia is also on the London Overground Milesmay line, as well as Southern on National Rail, both of which actually receive more services than the District line. We'll get to that soon, though.
Let's bring down the TfL tally to show the stats of each tube line in the borough. Well, it looks like the Circle line is back to first place, with 8 stations in total, along with the District line as well.
And the Overground has fallen into last place with the Central line, both with 2 stations each. And since we count the Overground lines too, let's show all of the Overground lines in Kensington and Chelsea. Well, the Milesmay line has 2 stations. Who'd have guessed, given that it's the only overground line in the borough.
Also, Kensington Olympia runs through both Kensington and Chelsea and Hammersmith and Fulham, but since it's officially under the authority of K&C, we're counting it for this borough.
Speaking of, let's talk about that station now. Kensington Olympia is the only station on the entire London Underground network to be directly on a limited service line, on the District line.
Normally, Olympia sees 3 trains per hour on the District line on weekends, as it's advertised that the District line runs there on weekends and public holidays. There used to be 3 trains per hour on weekdays too. Nowadays, however, there are only 8 trains per day which run from High Street Kensington to Olympia, and then there's an extra 2 trains which run from Olympia to High Street Kensington instead. The station also sees more use when there's an ongoing event at the Olympia Exhibition Centre.
Unfortunately, there are no bus stations in Kensington and Chelsea, but we can use this opportunity to mention something we haven't mentioned before on this show: cycling.
Oh yes! Cycling in London has become a lot more common in recent years, as there have been new cycleways installed in some parts of London, painted in either blue, red, or not painted at all. These cycle lanes are all across London. However, Kensington and Chelsea have been incredibly strict when it comes to cycleways.
For example, Cycleway 3 was originally planned to go to Acton, but it instead ended at Lancaster Gate. Similarly, Cycleway 9 originally planned to go all the way to central London, but instead ended at Kensington Olympia.
Uncoincidentally, these stopped specifically where the boundary of Kensington and Chelsea was. More recently, in 2019, the Council of Kensington and Chelsea vetoed a programme by TfL to allow safer walking and cycling in the borough.
And in 2020, a cycle lane in Kensington High Street was scrapped after only 7 weeks.
Needless to say, Kensington and Chelsea are terrified of vehicles with 2 wheels. Anywho, back to the rails.
There's only one currently disused tube station in the entire borough, that being Brompton Road on the Piccadilly line. It closed on the 30th of July 1934. This station suffered a similar fate to Down Street, which we discussed in a previous episode.
Yep, Knightsbridge Station had a newer entrance built near to Brompton Road, as newly built escalators replaced the lifts, and as a result, Brompton Road ceased operation. When it was a station, it closed on the 4th of May 1926 due to strike action, but it didn't reopen until the 4th of October the same year, and from then it was only served during weekends.
Sunday services were restored on the 2nd of January 1927, and even then, the station had low passenger usage, which was a factor of its closure. Knightsbridge's new entrance was the nail in the coffin for Brompton Road, though.
Also, since this borough is adjacent to the River Thames, there's a river bus pier here.
Cadogan Pier is the only river bus pier in the borough of Kensington and Chelsea. Riverbus 6 is the one that stops there.
Oh yeah, we should also mention the river services, as we didn't mention this in the first episode where we spoke about the river buses.
There are several boat services which run along the River Thames, all being named RB with a number.
RB1 runs from Battersea Power Station and Westminster to Barking Riverside. RB2 runs from Battersea Power Station to Embankment. RB4 runs between Canary Wharf and the unnecessarily longly named Doubletree Docklands Nelson Dock. And RB6 runs runs from Putney to Canary Wharf and North Greenwich.
There's also lots of river tours running between various parts of London, and the Woolwich Ferry connecting North and South Woolwich.
You know, with K&C being such a small borough, it's hard to find anything to talk about for transport, considering not many stations here have that interesting history to talk about. The river buses are cool though.
We can mention that Southern runs to 2 stations in the borough, but we don't normally cover National Rail stations, which is why we didn't talk about the amount of Thameslink stations last episode.
Anyway, with that being said, on to trivia! Kensington and Chelsea, the metropolitan boroughs, were merged into one borough during the merging of the boroughs in 1965. Kensington was a royal borough, so the merged borough had the full name of the Royal Borough of Kensington.
The borough was initially intended to be named Kensington, but due to protests by the residents of Chelsea and the Member of Parliament for Chelsea, Captain John Lichfield, the borough ended up being called Kensington and Chelsea.
Or say it with me now,
The dodecasyllabic, the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
Now, where have I heard that before?
Part of Hyde Park runs through Kensington and Chelsea, and Kensington Palace is in this part. This place is where some royal family members have resided.
Kensington and Chelsea used to have a very small population, especially for central London. Between 1801 and 1901, the population count has increased from 22,000 to 250,000. In 2022, the population count decreased to 146,000. Okay, I'm just gonna ask, what is with all these boroughs and the sudden increase and decrease in population? I'm aware 2 world wars happened, but what happened here in the late 1900s?
Maybe it had something to do with new towns being constructed, so people moved out of London to more affordable areas?
Well, as a result of this, Kensington and Chelsea has the smallest population out of any borough in London. No surprise, as we mentioned, it's the smallest one.
Kensington and Chelsea is twinned with Cannes in France. The city is situated on the French Riviera.
There's no sole Chelsea station on any train line here, but there would have been one as part of the Crossrail 2 project. It was shown that the station would have been located on King's Road, specifically the section of the road by Dovehouse Green, a small park next to the road. However, Crossrail 2 plans were shelved in late 2020, likely due to the ongoing pandemic at the time.
At least we still have Crossrail 1, which became the Elizabeth line.
Well, that's something, I guess. At least we got a new train line in recent years.
Well, that about concludes this episode of Borough Bugs.
Crazy how Kensington and Chelsea just decided to have its name be that because of protests.
Yeah, other boroughs weren't as lucky with their protests, as some boroughs campaigned hard for 2 place names in their boroughs' names. In fact, there's 2 other boroughs in London which include 2 place names in their name. Want to find out more? Stay tuned!
Or don't. You could just ignore this altogether.
I'd prefer if they didn't, though. Please stay tuned.
Free will is a thing, Vinbee. It's 2025.
Stay tuned!
Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
So much for stay tuned. I've been sat here for 20 minutes. Where's Vinbee? Oh well. Hello everyone, welcome to Borough Bugs, which is supposed to be hosted by me, Zach the Butterfly, and Vinbee the Bumblebee, but she's late. And this is Borough Bugs. Wow, this is such a dour note to begin an episode on. It doesn't feel right if one of us isn't present. Imagine the theme song. Zach and Zach the Borough Bug. Dear oh dear. Well, shockingly, I could mention that Vinbee being absent right now is relevant to today's borough. Surprisingly, Hammersmith and Fulham wasn't always called Hammersmith and Fulham. Until 1979, the borough was simply known as just Hammersmith, without Fulham. So, today's borough is... Hammersmith and Fulham! It is so empty here, mate. Hopefully she gets here soon. But for now, here's this. Still late, is she? Oh well. I always see Hammersmith and Fulham as Kensington and Chelsea's sibling. They both have an "and" in their names. That's pretty much the only comparison I can make right now. But hey, they're next to each other. Why question anything? Oh God, I really do ramble without Vinbee to add something to the conversation. I bet she'd say something like, "Oh, Hammersmith and Fulham isn't as posh as Kensington and Chelsea," or something along those lines. Let's move on to landmarks before I lose my mind. One of the landmarks in this borough which comes to people's minds the most is
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, I'm late.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry. My train got cancelled. You know how it is in the north.
Oh no, you're very early actually.
Oh, I am?
No, stupid, the landmark segment's just begun.
Oh, my bad. Well, what's the borough?
Hammersmith and Fulham.
Ooh, well, one of the landmarks of this borough which comes to people's mind the most is Westfield in White City.
I was literally about to mention that.
Westfield White City, officially Westfield London, is the largest shopping centre in the United Kingdom.
Better yet, it's the largest shopping centre in all of Europe. Since 2018, this shopping centre has boasted a total area of 240,000 square metres, or 2,600,000 square feet.
This shopping centre is so big, you can get to it via 5 different train stations. Both Shepherd's Bush stations, Shepherd's Bush Market, Wood Lane and White City.
Funnily enough, White City Station isn't actually the recommended station for going to Westfield. Shepherd's Bush and Wood Lane are all actually closer. This is the television centre, originally the BBC television centre.
Why originally? Does the BBC not use it anymore?
Well, the television centre opened on the 29th of June 1960 and was used by the BBC as their headquarters until the 31st of March 2013. When the building closed indefinitely, 5 out of the 8 studios there were demolished, leaving only studios 1, 2 and 3. Since then, the building was refurbished and reopened on the 1st of September 2017. Nowadays, the BBC do still in fact operate here, although in the remaining studios, and the rest of the building has been turned into mainly leisure as well as residential.
They should put Borough Bugs on TV, that'd be really awesome.
If only. Like that's ever gonna happen though.
Yeah, we're just too good for them.
This is Fulham Palace. This Grade 1 listed palace was the home of the Bishop of London from the 11th century up until 1973.
This palace is open to the public and serves as a free museum, just like the free museums in Kensington.
Yep. Within the museum, you can go and explore the palace for yourself, including various halls, including one known as the Great Hall, consisting of a table with some old scrolls containing some archaic-looking writing. Some of the other halls have paintings of people like Henry VIII. There's also some fascinating archaeological artifacts which have been found around the palace, and some other exhibits.
Wow, this place also has a walled garden, which is a botanical garden just up the way from the palace.
This garden has been described as remarkable before, and I don't disagree. Look at it, it's so pretty, and it's a great home for insects such as us.
The real bees and butterflies of the garden seem to agree. Wait, that's it?
Yeah, sorry, we did mention before that some episodes may have barely any landmarks. If you didn't quite catch that, here's proof. This may be a thing for some boroughs where there won't be as many landmarks to talk about.
Surely there must have been something else, right? Parks?
Many.
Hospitals?
2.
Oh, I guess we really are grasping at straws then.
Anyway, landmarks are done, now time for the choo-choo trains! And everything else that counts as transport. Yeah.
So, Zach, run it by me. Main Fulham station?
Fulham Broadway.
Bang! Main Hammersmith station?
Hammersmith. 2 of them.
Woo! I don't know what all that was. Guess whoever wrote the script was feeling great.
That would have been me, love. Anyway, yes, there are in fact 2 Hammersmith stations. The station on the Circle and Hammersmith and City line was the one that came first, indicative by the station's build. This station originally opened in 1864. The station building was later re-sited on the 1st of December 1868. Fun fact, this station has GWR benches visible on the platform. Cool, isn't it?
And the station on the District and Piccadilly lines came later. This station is built into the Hammersmith Broadway shopping centre. As well as the tube station, this shopping centre includes the upper-level Hammersmith bus station. We'll talk about this later.
And Fulham Broadway station is on the District line. This station is also inside a shopping centre, Fulham Broadway Retail Centre. This station has a really funny look, as half of it is the original build of the station, and the other half has been upgraded to accommodate the shopping centre. On the original side, there's a set of stairs leading to nowhere. These used to go to the old ticket hall. Nowadays, it's used as a bridge between platforms.
Let's bring down the TfL tally to see what Hammersmith and Fulham has for us today.
Well, the District line wins today, with 7 stations in total, and the Piccadilly and Overground are both tied at 2. And the Overground line in this borough is, of course... Yep, Mildmay has 2 stations once again.
You know, I always wondered, how come it says the total number of stations is 15, yet the amount of stations on each line adds up to way more than that?
Because some stations are served by multiple lines.
Oh, I get it.
Also, West Brompton is technically in this borough, but we already counted it for Kensington and Chelsea, as the entrance to the station was in that borough. Sorry.
Also, where there's Mildmay, there's Southern. Southern Railway runs along the branch of the Mildmay line which runs through this borough and Kensington and Chelsea, running services up to Watford Junction and Milton Keynes.
Want to hear a joke?
Go on.
What's the best thing to do in Milton Keynes?
What?
Leave.
Hi, I'm Lúcás the Firefly. We apologise to anyone who lives in Milton Keynes. This isn't my drum kit. It's sax.
Also, Hammersmith and Fulham has 2 bus stations in the borough. White City Bus Station, which is situated just outside of the Westfield Shopping Centre,
and Hammersmith Bus Station. There's technically 2 parts of Hammersmith Bus Station, the upper level, which is inside the shopping centre, and served by bus routes 9, 27, 72, 110, 190, 211, 220, 267, 283, 295, 306, H91, N9, N11, N27, N97, and N266. As well as coach services towards Bridgewater, Taunton and Wellington.
And the lower level bus station, just outside the shopping centre, is served by routes 72, 533, N33 and N72.
One of these routes has a really specific reason for existing, by the way.
Yep, the 533. Let's explain the reasoning for this route's operation.
In 2019, Hammersmith Bridge was closed due to cracks being found in the bridge's iron pedestals, which were a result of corrosion. As a result, in order to prevent the cracks from worsening, they shut the bridge to all motor traffic and restricted it to only pedestrians and cyclists. And as a result, Route 533 was introduced, running via Chiswick Bridge to ensure it can get across to the other side of Hammersmith Bridge.
However, in 2020, a heatwave worsened the conditions of the bridge, and access to pedestrians and cyclists were eventually closed off until 2021, when the bridge was partially reopened to pedestrians and cyclists, and restoration of the bridge commenced.
In April of 2025, the bridge was repurposed and resurfaced into a cycleway and pedestrian walkway, and the 533 is still in operation today.
What a very strange bus route. Also, there's one river bus pier in Hammersmith and Fulham.
Yep, Chelsea Harbour, served by Riverbus 6, serves the surrounding area of Imperial Wharf.
Is there anything else to talk about?
Abandoned stations?
Oh yeah, there's a very complicated history about the surrounding stations of Hammersmith, so I'm going to explain it in one big go. Here we go. In 1844, 2 different Shepherd's Bush stations opened on the London and South Western Railway. The first one lasted 6 months, and the second one lasted 5 years. In 1864, the Metropolitan Railway came to the area, as it extended from Paddington down to Hammersmith, opening 2 new stations, a new Shepherd's Bush and Hammersmith Station. Latimer Road then opened on the 16th of December, 1868, and a new curve of track was extended down to the LSWR. In 1869, a new curve of track went westbound, curving down towards Hammersmith, but instead of connecting it to Hammersmith, a new station located on what we now call Hammersmith Grove opened as Hammersmith Grove Road, and opened on New Year's Day of 1869. A small curve of track was then built to link both the Metropolitan Railway and LSWR together. In the same year, Uxbridge Road opened on the LSWR. Later on the 1st of May 1874, the LSWR opened their own Shepherd's Bush station on that same curve of track where Hammersmith Grove Road was located. And then in 1900, the Central London Railway, which is what we now call the Central Line, opened, and its terminus station was also called Shepherd's Bush. So now there's 3 Shepherd's Bush stations. And then in 1908, Wood Lane opened on the Metropolitan Railway as Wood Lane (Exhibition), and the Central London Railway opened their own own Wood Lane station, not called Wood Lane in brackets exhibition, but just Wood Lane. And then in 1914, Shepherd's Bush station on the Metropolitan Railway closed, and a new Shepherd's Bush was built slightly further north, and Goldhawk Road station opened slightly further south, all on the 1st of April. Wood Lane exhibition temporarily closes on the 31st of October 1914 until the 5th of November 1920, when it's renamed into Wood Lane in brackets White City. During then, the LSWR closed the covered track with their Shepherd's Bush station and Hammersmith Grove Road on the 3rd of June 1916. Fast forward to the 21st of October 1940, when Uxbridge Road station closed, and the curve from Latimer Road to the LSWR goes too. And then in 1947, Wood Lane on the Central London Railway closed, and a new White City station opened on it, and Wood Lane White City was renamed to just White City on the 23rd of November the same year, making 2 White City stations now. And then on the 24th of October 1959, White City closed on the Metropolitan line due to a fire, and it never reopened. And then on the 30th of July 1990, this whole part of the Metropolitan line becomes the Hammersmith and City line. And then on the 29th of September, the London Overground was opened, and Shepherd's Bush opened on the Overground in 2008, roughly in the same location the old Uxbridge Road station was. And then on the 12th of October the same year, a brand new Wood Lane station was opened. And on the same day, Shepherd's Bush station on the H&C is renamed into Shepherd's Bush Market, and the already existing Shepherd's Bush station on the Central line was rebuilt with a new entrance. And on the 30th of December 2009, the Circle line is extended down to Hammersmith, and that is it!
Where do we even go from there?
Trivia!
All right.
Hammersmith and Fulham has a similar story to Kensington and Chelsea, although there weren't any significant protests this time around. It consisted of the 2 metropolitan boroughs, which were obviously Hammersmith and Fulham. When the boroughs merged in 1965, the borough was simply called Hammersmith.
The borough was renamed to Hammersmith and Fulham on the 1st of April 1979 by the London Borough Council of Hammersmith and Fulham, exactly 14 years after the borough was initially formed.
Hammersmith and Fulham is unique for being the only London borough with 3 football clubs: Chelsea, Fulham, and Queen's Park Rangers. Most other boroughs that have a football club only have 1. I'm surprised I even bothered to mention this, as personally I do not care for football.
Careful, you're in England. You'll get jumped for saying that.
Oh!
The Great West Road begins in the east of Hammersmith and Fulham. This road leads to the start of the M4, which is a motorway that runs all the way to Pont Abraham in Wales.
Hammersmith and Fulham is twinned with 8 other towns across Europe: Anderlecht in Belgium, Boulogne-Billancourt in France, Montefiore-Conca in Italy, Neukölln in Germany, and Zaanstad in the Netherlands. The other 3 are the Polish cities Siemiatycze, Rzeszów, and Sopot, through the ICLEI.
Hammersmith and Fulham's population in 1801 was only around 10,000. Since then, the population has seen a significant increase. If you ignore the dip in population throughout the 1900s, the population is now at 188,000.
I would not be surprised if the population count increases and decreases for every borough. It seems to be a trend with these boroughs towards the centre of London.
A curious case of the population changes. It must have been because of the new neighbourhoods being built around suburbia.
Anyways, that's all for the London borough of Hammersmith and Fulham.
We've now covered 2 boroughs with an "and" in their names. Want to learn about the 3rd one? Stay tuned until next time.
Actually, no, we're not doing that one next.
What? Why not?
Well, as you said in the first ever episode...
To start off, we'll be covering all of the boroughs in inner London. Oh, well, what's next then?
Well, we can press the red button to show what boroughs we'll be covering first. See?
Oh, I get it now.
Barking and Dagenham comes later, everyone. Patience is a virtue.
Well, in that case, next episode will be about...
And now, Zack the Butterfly will sing a classic Christmas song for you.
On the first day of Bugmas, my true love gave to me a butterfly in a tree. Hello! On the other days of Bugmas, my true love gave to me 12 lamps are lighting,
11 tube lights crowding,
10 pins are bowling, 9 buggies dancing, 8 antennae dangling, 7 screens are bluing, 6 trains delaying, 5 cancelled trains, 4 silly friends, 3 a.m, 2 hosting bugs, and a butterfly in a tree.
That's right. Coming this Christmas,
the Zack the Butterfly Holly Jolly Holiday Extravaganza album remastered edition for 2025, featuring such classics like Jingle Bells, except the instrumental was royalty-free music by Kevin MacLeod.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey!
Also featuring Jingle Bell Rock, except Zack is facing the wrong way. If you pre-order now, you get this bonus track with Vinbee singing All I Want for Christmas Is You into a microphone from a Christmas cracker. And many other Christmas classics from your favorite British insects. So, what are you waiting for? Order now!
To order this product, please call 020-477-477. That's 020-477-477. You must be 18 years old or older to purchase this product. This album contains explicit language like and it's not suitable for children. This is not a real product. Seriously, this is not real. Don't try and look for this. It's not a real product. We promise you.
Look, I don't know. Maybe we'll do a Spotify release next Christmas. But for now, go open your presents or something.
Zack and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them.
What are you doing?
I'm doing Hamlet. You know, the tragedy? The famous to be or not to be line by Shakespeare? He was a famous playwright, you know?
Yes, everyone and their mum knows who Shakespeare is, but what's this got to do with anything?
You'll find out in a moment. Anyways, welcome to Borough Bugs, the show where me and Vinbee take a look at what all of the 32 London boroughs have to offer.
Hello, I'm Vinbee, and I've actually been to the place where Shakespeare lived.
Hello, I'm Zack. I can vouch for her. It's true. She did go to Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare lived. And this is Borough Bugs.
Now, can you please tell me why you were reciting his 400-year-old texts?
Well, where's Shakespeare's globe?
Oh, we're doing Southwark today, aren't we?
Yeah, Southwark is home to none other than Shakespeare's globe, albeit a replica. We'll talk more about it soon.
So, today's borough can only be... Southwark!
And yes, it's pronounced Southwark.
Why couldn't it just be pronounced Southwark?
I don't know. Funny.
Fair enough.
Anyways, overview time.
Wait, Peckham's in Southwark?
Yeah, why?
Well, Peckham is usually considered one of London's worst areas.
Why?
Mainly because people point out crime statistics and how Peckham is apparently the trenches.
While that's true to an extent, Peckham is no more dangerous than the area surrounding it, so it's about as dangerous as places like Westminster.
Fair enough. Just try not to run into the Peckham Terminator.
What?
It's a video. Look it up. Be careful, though. There's strong language.
All right. Anyways, landmark time. We're, of course, starting off with Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, originally built in 1599, destroyed by a fire in 1613, rebuilt in 1614, and then finally demolished in 1644. The current-day Globe Theatre, built in 1997, is essentially a replica of the original 17th century building. It was rebuilt as faithfully as possible.
However, due to safety concerns, the theatre can only accommodate 1,400 people, unlike the original Globe Theatre's 3,000 people.
This Elizabethan playhouse is located in the north of the borough, just by the south bank of the River Thames, around 230 metres from the site of the original Globe Theatre.
This play stages many of Shakespeare's plays every summer. If you've ever been to school, or at most completed it, it is likely you would have read about one of his plays.
I don't think I ever did any Shakespeare for my GCSEs. Did you?
I did Macbeth. I failed English literature anyways.
I only ever failed geography.
Ironic, because you do a geography program now.
Oh, yeah. You just can't write this stuff, can't you?
Well, I mean, you clearly did.
It was a joke! This is Borough Market.
Don't you ever get tired of saying "this is" over and over again?
Not really. Anyway, Borough Market is one of the largest and oldest food markets in London, with the market's roots tracing back to around the 12th century.
There's even claims that it could have existed much earlier, as there have been claims of it existing since 1014.
By the way, if you're wondering why the market is void of people in their hundreds, and why everything is shut, we decided to film this on a day the market was closed. It was easier for us.
The market buildings were designed in 1851, and an Art Deco-style entrance was added in 1932. The nearby railway infrastructure had caused the buildings to have significant changes made to them. The market is best known for selling a variety of gourmet foods from across the world. They also sell other products, including wine, seasonings, vinegars, and oils. Zach, wake up.
Oh, sorry. I did say before markets bore me to death.
But this one's got such a grand style to it. And cheese.
It's nice, but markets still tire me out, inside or out.
Spoil sports.
We obviously can't ignore the tallest building in London, right? This is the Shard.
Oh, it's so tall!
Yep, this tower stands at 309.6 metres, or 1,016 feet. This building is the tallest building in the United Kingdom, and the 7th tallest building in Europe, behind the Warsaw Tower in Warsaw, Poland, which actually beats the Shard in height by less than half a metre. Talk about cutting it close.
The tower was designed by Italian architect Renzo Piano and was designed as a 72-story tall pyramid-shaped skyscraper intended for mixed use. Construction began in 2009 and was completed in 2012, and the Shard was opened on the 1st of February 2013. The building's contract cost a whopping £435 million.
The tower is open to the public via an observation deck called The View from the Shard. It does cost money though, so if you want to see London a few hundred meters away from the ground, make sure you've got money, and if you don't think it's worth it, take a look at this view. Absolutely wonderful.
The view from the Shard is so spectacular.
Isn't it just? You can really see all across London from the top.
Well, now it's time to go from high up in the sky down into the ground as we explore the transports, high and low, of the London Borough of Southwark. Dun dun dun!
Bit extra, no? The definitive station of Southwark is none other than, well, Southwark Station.
This station is located on the Jubilee Line, specifically the Jubilee Line extension. This station provides connections to the nearby National Rail station Waterloo East, served by South Eastern, via an entrance used by basically nobody.
Let's bring down the TfL tally and see how many stations and how many lines we have here. Wow, the Overground comes on top today, with 6 stations in total.
And the Bakerloo line has a measly 1 station. Ha ha!
Don't laugh at the Bakerloo line, you'll hurt its feelings.
Unbelievably disrespectful.
See? Anyway, what Overground lines do we have?
Ooh, a new line for the board. And since the Overground has the most for this borough, the Windrush line has one too.
Anyway, it's worth noting that the Waterloo and City line passes through this borough, but seeing as the line only has 2 stations and neither are in this borough, we can't count it, unfortunately.
So close, yet so far.
Southwark is home to one of London's large terminus stations, London Bridge, with Southern Railway and South Eastern Railway services, stretching to the counties of Surrey, Sussex and Kent.
Not to mention Thameslink, connecting to Brighton, Bedford, Cambridge and Peterborough.
London Bridge Station opened on the 14th of December 1836 as part of the London and Greenwich Railway, meaning that this station is even older than Euston, and is one of the oldest railway stations in the London metropolitan area to still be running. However, it wasn't the first one.
Spa Road Railway Station was the original terminus of the London and Greenwich Railway until 1915, when it closed to passengers. This station currently still stands, but is now a light industrial estate. Some elements of the station are still visible, such as the old booking office. There's even a plaque stating that this was London's first railway terminus.
Southwark has a depot for the tube, a first for Borough Bugs.
London Road Depot is the depot for Bakerloo Line trains and is down the road from Lambeth North Station. The best way to get a look at the depot is at the crossroads of Lambeth Road and St George's Road, where if you peer over the bridge, you can see the depot.
Some of you gongoozlers, yes that is a real word, look it up, may be wondering if there's any river bus piers in this borough. And there are, there's 5.
London Bridge City Pier, served by RB1 and RB6.
Greenland Surrey Quays Pier, also served by RB1 and RB6.
Bankside Pier, again also served by RB1 and RB6, as well as one of the river tour routes.
Rotherhithe Pier, which is served by RB4, and is the same pier which had the really long stupid name of Doubletree whatever it was.
And Butler's Wharf Pier, which is right by Tower Bridge, and is also served by a river tour route.
And some of you bus spotters may be wondering if there's any bus stations in the borough. Well, there are those too. There's 3.
Peckham Bus Station, located just off of Peckham High Street.
London Bridge Bus Station, situated just outside of the railway station and the Shard.
And Canada Water Bus Station, which was built alongside the tube station when it opened in 1999. More on that in a moment.
Yep, Canada Water was one of many stations to be a part of the Jubilee Line extension, which opened in 1999.
Like we discussed with Aldwych before, the Jubilee Line, known then as the Fleet Line, was going to extend further beyond Charing Cross. The line which went from Stanmore to Charing Cross was Phase 1, but there were further phases for extensions.
Yep, Phase 2 would have extended along Fleet Street, stopping at Aldwych, Ludgate Circus, Cannon Street and Fenchurch Street.
And Phase 3 would have seen the line continue towards Surrey Docks, about where the modern-day Surrey Quays station is on the London Overground Windrush line. It would have gone down towards New Cross Gate and New Cross, taking over from the East London line, which we'll also discuss soon.
An alternative plan for Phase 3 was to go towards Thamesmead, stopping at places like Wapping, Millwall, which would be around where South Quay DLR station now is, North Greenwich, Silvertown, Woolwich Arsenal, and then to Thamesmead Central.
And Phase 4 would have continued down toward Addiscombe and Hayes.
Good God, would have been confusing as the Northern Line, eh?
I can only imagine. But alas, none of this happened, as changes in land use, especially around the Docklands area towards the end of the 20th century, resulted in the extension having a total overhaul.
For the line to extend, the new stations had to be future-proof, with radical architectural design, different from anything that came prior on the tube. The first of the extension stations to open were Stratford, West Ham, Canning Town and North Greenwich on the 14th of May 1999.
After that came Canary Wharf, Canada Water and Bermondsey on the 24th of September that same year. Fun fact about Bermondsey Station, the station building is designed in such a way that natural light reaches all the way down to platform level. They really weren't messing around with the architecture here.
Then, London Bridge, Southwark and Waterloo opened up on the 20th of November 1999, and then finally came Westminster. Westminster was actually the last station to open on the extension, due to construction complications with the already existing District and Circle Line platforms, but it finally opened on the 22nd of December 1999, just in time for the opening of the Millennium Dome at North Greenwich.
But what about Charing Cross? What happened to the former terminus of the Jubilee Line? Well, if you remember from prior, Charing Cross's Jubilee Line platforms closed to the public on the 19th of November 1999. You're still able to visit it today, but only if you're on an expensive tour.
The final product of the JLE became one of London's massivest development projects, and it ended up being one of the most vital parts of the London Underground network, as well as the most visually distinct part, with the platform-edge doors and the futuristic 1990s style. It's just really hard to hate, unless you're a boring individual. Learn to love what you have, I say.
Well, I think we should talk about what we no longer have. The East London line.
Oh yeah, the East London line was mostly what the modern-day London Overground Windrush line is. There's still evidence that it used to be part of the tube, as some signs still mention East London line. Another massive giveaway is the fact that most of this section is underground, mainly because part of the line between Rotherhithe and Wapping was part of the old Thames Tunnel, which was a failed foot tunnel which went underneath the Thames. The tunnel was converted into a railway line in 1869.
The East London line was originally part of the Metropolitan Railway. From 1933 until its closure in 2007, it was given the name East London Line, and the line received a dark orange colour in 1990. The line used A-stock trains, which were also used on the Metropolitan Line.
The line started from New Cross and New Cross Gate, both terminus stations on separate branches. The line immediately joins together just before Surrey Quay Station, then it heads through Rotherhithe, Wapping, Shadwell, Whitechapel and Shoreditch. In 1999, Canada Water Station opened, and that's how the East London line was up until its closure in 2007.
A lot of stations on the East London line don't look too much different now from how they did when they were part of the tube.
When the line closed in 2007, some stations temporarily closed to be converted into London Overground stations, and some stations got shut entirely, but that's a story for another time.
Lots of line history this time, isn't there?
Well, sometimes there's stations with history, and sometimes there's entire lines with history. The East London line is quite an interesting topic, and we'll probably talk about it again if we find anything else. Who knows? But for now, trivia time! Southwark was comprised of 3 metropolitan boroughs, Bermondsey, Camberwell and Southwark. When the boroughs merged in 1965, the merged borough had the name of Southwark. This was likely because Southwark is one of the oldest parts of South London, giving it some historical significance. Nevertheless, Southwark is now one of central London's biggest boroughs.
The Jubilee Line extension runs through this borough, and all of the stations on the extension have an interchange with them, except Bermondsey, which is the only station on the extension to connect with nothing else. Southwark would also fall under that, but officially it connects with Waterloo East Station, so it doesn't count here.
Southwark is twinned with 2 towns in Europe, Clichy, a small commune in the northwestern suburbs of Paris in France, and Langenhagen, a small town in Hanover in Germany. It's also twinned with Cambridge, Massachusetts in the United States.
Southwark is home to the old City Hall, which is currently covered in scaffolding. This building was the headquarters of the Greater London Authority from 2002 to 2021. The current City Hall is in a different borough now, but we'll get to that another time.
Southwark is home to the tallest hospital in London, Guy's Hospital. The 34-storey high tower wing stands at just over 148 metres high. Speaking of tall towers, the Tate Modern Art Gallery is located at Bankside in the north of the borough, notable for its enormous chimney at the entrance.
Southwark's population in 1801 was at 114,000. Nowadays, the population has significantly increased to 314,000. Of course, this is a decrease from the population in 1901 though, which was at an impressive 578,000. Do you think we'll ever cover a borough where the population doesn't decrease?
Maybe in the more outer boroughs, but who knows? Exponential population growth ain't getting any smaller. Maybe in 100 years' time, these boroughs will go back to having teeny tiny populations.
Yeah, I don't think they will.
And how do you know that?
Yeah, actually, fair enough.
Anyway, time to resume my Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more
Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
You know, Vinbee, I've been wondering, what do you think of redevelopment in London?
I think redevelopment is good when it's done right. Places like Stratford are horrible examples of redevelopment. But then, just a bit south, places like Canary Wharf are really great examples. They're both in East London, but are there any places in West London that have been nicely redeveloped?
There might be. Anyways, welcome to Borough Bugs, the show where me and Vinbee look at London's boroughs, find out what is there, and then we show it to you.
Hello, my name is Vinbee, and you really didn't try with that joke, did you?
And my name is Zach. It's the best I could come up with. There's only so many ways you can introduce the show. And this is Borough Bugs.
So back to that question we asked. Are there any places in West London that are good examples of redevelopment?
Anything but Hounslow.
Correct! But the one we're going to be looking at today is Battersea Power Station in West London. Well, southwest London.
Yeah, Battersea Power Station is one of London's most recent examples of redevelopment. With the old power station being converted into a shopping centre, it's brought the whole area to life, with 2 new tube stations on the Northern Line as a bonus. More on that later. But which borough is it in, you may ask? Well, let's find out. It's Wandsworth.
Wait, huh? I thought it'd be Battersea.
No, Battersea isn't a borough.
Wait, I thought it was.
You bumbling fool. Lúcás, give me back my drums. Make me! Anyways, time for the overview. Wandsworth's got plenty of structures, old and new, from the shining new Northern Line extension to the splendid Putney Bridge from the 18th century.
Honestly, a wide variety of history, and a great segue into the landmark segment.
World record for the shortest overview epilogue. The animator will be pleased. Get back to work, everyone's waiting.
Easily the most notable thing in Wandsworth right now is Battersea Power Station.
Yep, the original power station started construction in 1929 and was completed in 1955. The building was split into Battersea A and Battersea B.
Battersea A was decommissioned in 1975, and 3 years later in 1978, Battersea B was eventually decommissioned. The building remained empty until 2014. 2 years before then, in 2012, plans were drawn up to completely redevelop the power station, as well as the surrounding areas, to include residential areas, restaurants, bars, shops, and more.
On the 14th of October 2022, the redevelopment was completed, and for the first time in nearly 40 years, the power station saw regular use once again, instead serving a completely different purpose, as it's now a very expensive shopping centre.
Along with the redevelopment, 1 year prior in 2021, in preparation, Battersea Power Station gained its own tube station, which we will discuss soon, like we said.
Imagine living here.
It'd be crazy expensive, but it would be cool. Fair play if you can afford to live here. This is Tooting Bec Lido.
Oh, a swimming pool? Oh, I can't swim. Bugs aren't made to swim.
That's okay, neither can I.
We can't swim! Anyway, Tooting Bec Lido is one of the oldest open-air swimming pools in the UK. It originally opened on the 28th of July, 1906, known then as the Tooting Bathing Lake.
The pool is usually open from May to September each year, and is open to the general public during all welcome times.
No point in doing that for us then.
Wait, what happens if we try to swim?
We die.
Huh?
Let me explain.
Oh. Insect anatomy is stupid.
What's a Borough Bugs episode without a park?
Literally the previous episode.
Apart from that, this is Battersea Park. This park was opened in 1858, and before then, it was apparently a popular spot for duelling. On guard, I say. Don't ask why I own this.
This park contains none other than London's Peace Pagoda, which was built in 1985. A Peace Pagoda is a Buddhist monument which inspires peace and provides focus. The monument can help people unite in their search for world peace, and is described as a symbol of light in the darkness of the present day of the world.
The Peace Pagoda has Japanese inscriptions on each third of the building. This one, on the west niche, Rissho Ankoku, translates to Establishment of Righteousness to Bring Peace to Nations. Easier said than done, honestly. Every year in June, a celebration for the Peace Pagoda is held.
Some other things within the park include a children's zoo, a bandstand, a boating lake, and a lot of sports facilities. Lots of things to do here, but you may be wondering, how will I get here? Well, you can get here using National Rail, with Queenstown Road Station, but there's also another station. However, our knowledge on this is a bit limited right now, if you know what I mean. More on this later.
You know, we don't really cover bridges in this show, do we?
Yeah, mainly because bridges typically connect to two boroughs, so it makes it complicated. But we'll do it if it works.
Putney Bridge is one of the oldest bridges in London, even older than Westminster Bridge. It opened on the 29th of November, 1729. However, that was the open date for the first bridge. The one we have right now is the second bridge, opened on the 29th of May, 1886.
The reason why there was a second bridge was because the first one was damaged by a river barge in 1870. They did replace the part that was destroyed, but they soon demolished the whole thing and built the second one in its place, which is the one we have today.
The bridge looks especially great at nighttime, with the warm lighting reflecting in the River Thames from the street lamps.
Don't you know someone who's interested in, lighting and stuff?
Yep, because they're a popular insect species among people, I think people will like them. Let me introduce you to the bug who makes this show run smoothly, my good friend, Vera the Moth.
Oh, why hello! I am Vera the Moth. And yes, the street lamps on Putney Bridge are something to behold, as the sodium lighting can give off such a comfortable and snuggly feel, unlike horrible fluorescent LED lighting, which is so blinding that it just makes you feel like you're in a dentist office. No joy in whimsy in the brightest colour on the planet. Oh my. Yes, well, anyway, I think we should all get rid of the standard white lighting we have everywhere now and bring back orange lighting. It's way more aesthetically pleasing if I do say so myself. Anyway, thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Bye bye. Thank you for giving me my own bit, you two. It was nice to talk about the wonders of lighting.
You have very cool eyes.
Oh, thank you. Anyways, toodaloo, gotta get back to running the show.
What? They get a whole bit to themselves? Why don't I get anything?
Do you have anything interesting to talk about?
Well, not exactly.
Then I suppose you'll just have to keep working the camera for now. Sorry, Lucas. Maybe another time. And give me back my drums!
Shall we do the transport segment now?
I suppose so. There are 3 Wandsworth stations in London, but only 2 of them are in this borough.
Wandsworth Road Station is, interestingly, not in the borough of Wandsworth. This station is on the London Overground Windrush line, just outside of the borough. The 2 Wandsworth stations in the borough are on National Rail.
Wandsworth Town is on South Western Railway in Zone 2, on an every half-an-hour service on the suburban lines to Windsor and Reading.
And Wandsworth Common is on Southern in Zone 3, and is the first station south of Clapham Junction.
Let's have a look at what TfL has for us for the entirety of the borough. Oh, that is tragic.
Well, as of this episode, Wandsworth holds the record for the smallest amount of Transport for London stations in London, as the Northern Line is in first place, with an abnormally small 4 stations. If it weren't for the 2 brand new stations, Battersea Power Station and Nine Elms, there'd be a 3-way tie with this episode's tube lines.
Yeah. Alas, the District and Overground are both tied for last place instead, with a more reasonable amount of 2 stations each.
I suppose we have to do the Overground lines, don't we? Wait, how does that make sense?
What, Clapham Junction having 2 Overground lines?
Huh? No, not that. I'm looking at a tube map, and it shows that Clapham Junction is the only Overground station in Wandsworth. What gives?
Well, have you ever heard of a parliamentary train?
Is it the Prime Minister's personal train line?
What? No. Let me explain. Battersea Park Station is the only London Overground station, and by extension, the only TfL station to be completely omitted from regular tube maps. This is because Battersea Park exists on the London Overground as a parliamentary service, which essentially means that the London Overground is required to run trains to Battersea Park to keep it open. Battersea Park Station is on an incredibly limited service on the Windrush line, even more limited than Kensington Olympia on the District line. While Olympia runs trains every 20 minutes on weekends and there are few trains in the morning and evening, Battersea Park only ever sees 2 services in the early mornings and 1 service in the evening, meaning that Battersea Park is the least served TfL station on the entire network, with only 3 trains per day and no Sunday services either.
Reminds me of home.
Of course it does. Oh, and also, when Clapham Junction is closed, all trains westbound are diverted towards Battersea Park and they terminate there instead.
At least it gets some use.
By about 5 people. I can just imagine people being like, wait, I want to go Clapham Junction, where am I?
They don't even have an announcement to tell people to get off. Instead, the driver just goes...
Since we're talking about the Overground, we might as well go to one of the busiest London Overground stations on the network.
Oh yeah! Clapham Junction is one of the busiest stations in southwest London. It's so busy that it's even counted as one of the big London stations, as Clapham Junction has its own symbol for the station. Other national rail stations also have these symbols, usually comprised of the first letter of the station's name. Clapham Junction's is represented by a C.
Clapham Junction has 17 platforms. Platforms 1 and 2 serve the individual London Overground lines, platforms 3 to 11 serve South Western Railway, and platforms 12 to 17 serve Southern. One of the platforms, however, platform 8, is disused.
Some of the platforms at Clapham Junction are curved, which causes a gap between the train and the platform.
No wonder they say, mind the gap, please.
Anyway, on platform 9, the track is at an angle, so that the trains can lean into the platform. However, on platform 8, the track is also at an angle, but the trains lean away from the platform, causing a gap which is too wide to have trains stop there.
Another issue with platform 8 is that the track is way too high for trains to let people off. You might think the gap isn't actually that big, but since Clapham Junction has so much traffic coming into it, yeah, you can imagine there's going to be a problem. Because of this, there's both a width issue and a height issue with the trains. Unprofessional.
I just remembered, we have to talk about the Northern Line extension.
Oh yeah, the Northern Line was extended to Battersea in September of 2021, in preparation for the area's redevelopment. 2 new stations came out of this, Battersea Power Station and 9 Elms. The new stations all stand out immensely and have very modern designs in comparison to stations built less than 20 years ago. The new stations are all in Zone 1, which forced Kennington Station into Zones 1 and 2. Speaking of, the line uses a part of the Northern Line which you're not really supposed to be on.
The Kennington Loop is a loop of track used by trains terminating at Kennington to turn back around to go up the line. Nothing special admittedly, but some people have ridden it. You're technically not meant to do this. I personally don't have the guts, unfortunately.
You have the guts to break into Buckingham Palace, but not the guts to ride a train?
Train people are scary. They're mean.
I feel like we should also mention the riverbus piers here. We've got quite a few this time, and also one of them has recently had its name changed.
The piers in Wandsworth are Putney Pier, which is the terminus for Riverbus 6,
Battersea Power Station Pier, which is the terminus for Riverbus 1,
Wandsworth Riverside Quarter Pier, a very clunky name,
and St Mary's Wandsworth Pier, which only recently just got renamed, and for genuinely good reason too.
St Mary's Wandsworth Pier was originally named Plantation Wharf Pier, and this caused some rather serious issues, as the word plantation actually has links to the slave trade.
They've actually been attempting to change the name of the pier and the nearby housing development of the same name for a few years now. Only recently has the pier been renamed. The housing development includes road names such as the controversially named Cotton Row. You can still see the original name on maps at some piers and the nearby bus stop. This transport section is already running long.
6 minutes and 2 seconds.
To be precise. But I think we have time to mention cycling, right?
Yeah, we've got time.
Yes! Cycle superhighways 7 and 8 lie within Wandsworth. The reason why they're called superhighways is because they haven't received the rebranding some cycle routes have already received. Most of the previously established cycle superhighways have been rebranded to just cycleways. A good example is Cycle Superhighway 3, which has received new paint to reflect the rebranding in some parts. CS7 and CS8 still retain the old superhighway branding.
Cycle Superhighway 7 starts in the City of London and follows the Northern Line all the way down to Collier's Wood. This cycleway is largely unsegregated, with most of the route being a part of the A3 and A24.
Cycle Superhighway 8 is actually split in two. It has partially received some rebranding on the north of the Thames, but south of the river it still retains the superhighway branding. The superhighway section runs from Battersea Park to the Southside Shopping Centre.
Well, that's all we have for transport.
Cycle superhighways, omitted stations, incredibly busy railway stations, Wandsworth has essentially got it all. Now we move on to the trivia segment.
Not as boring as I thought.
Yippee! What if I told you that Wandsworth could have been bigger?
Bigger?
Bigger. The original metropolitan borough of Wandsworth was initially larger than how it is today. During the merging of the boroughs in 1965, Wandsworth was split into two. The western half, containing the core area of Wandsworth, became part of the borough of Wandsworth, and the eastern half, containing the areas of Streatham and Clapham, became part of the borough of Lambeth. But that's a story for another time. After the old borough was split, the metropolitan borough of Battersea joined in to create today's London borough of Wandsworth.
That's so fascinating that they split the borough up to keep the borough size consistent. In fact, I'm feeling inspired. Why don't we split the table in half? Sort of a reenactment of a real historical event. We don't ever do that kind of stuff on this show. Shall we try it?
Huh?
I get 80% and you get the rest. That sound like a fair deal?
Moving swiftly on.
Every year, when the tennis championships are on at Wimbledon Tennis Grounds, Southfield's tube station, being the closest station to the grounds, gets a makeover to celebrate the occasion, with tennis-themed decoration everywhere on the platform.
In 1801, the population of Wandsworth was just above 12,000. Then, 100 years later, in 1901, the population shot up to 306,000. And then, in 2024, for the first time ever on Borough Bugs, the population of a borough has increased, as the population of Wandsworth for that year was 337,000. I wonder how many more boroughs will have a population increase.
Earlier, we mentioned Battersea Power Station's redevelopment, and since it became a shopping centre, this makes it the newest shopping centre in all of London, as of 2026 at least.
Wandsworth is informally twinned with Villiers-Pluich in Picardy in France. It's also twinned with Schiedam in Rotterdam in the Netherlands.
A study from 2017 shows that Wandsworth has the lowest rate of unemployment out of any London borough.
However, this study is from 2017, and the unemployment rate has gone up a bit.
Imagine having a job in this economy.
It is, in fact, incredibly difficult to find work nowadays. So our advice to any of you, if you're planning to look for a job, just apply as much as you can, I suppose.
Yeah, and hope for the best. We're not exactly Job Centre Plus here.
No, we are not. Anyway, that concludes this episode of Borough Bugs.
Can I please cut the table? I won't take more than half, I promise.
You're paying for that if you even attempt it. Thank you.
Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
Wait, we can't blink?
Yeah, I was wondering why we were having a staring contest.
Anywho, welcome to Borough Bugs, a show hosted by two creatures without the ability to close their eyes because insects cannot do that. I'm Zach, and I have a nearly 360-degree field of vision. I can see behind me.
And I'm Vinbee, and my vision is just over 270 degrees.
And this is Borough Bugs.
You can really see behind yourself?
Yeah, wanna test me?
Okay, how many fingers?
2.
Oh. Yeah, I guess you can.
Hold on a minute, why are we even talking about eyes?
Well, there's more to this borough than meets the eye.
Ah, I see what you mean.
The London Borough of Lambeth is home to none other than the London Eye, arguably one of the world's most famous Ferris wheels.
We'll get to this big ol' wheel momentarily, but for now, let's light up today's borough. Lambeth.
Have you ever noticed how the London Eye kind of looks like Vera's eyes?
I beg your pardon?
Vinbee was just saying that your eyes look a bit like the London Eye.
Really? Oh, so they do. Well, if I squint, it probably looks better.
Don't hurt yourself.
Anyway, let's see what Lambeth has for us today. So many inspiring looking areas.
We're not going to be doing eye puns for the rest of the episode, by the way. But you're not wrong. Some areas, like Vauxhall, have had some redevelopment in the past few years, specifically in places like Nine Elms.
And places like Brixton, which are considered staples of London's culture, have had improvements to neighbourhoods and public areas.
Redevelopment's not entirely a recent thing, too. The London Eye on the South Bank is essentially what you could call a Y2K redevelopment.
Nobody has said that ever, and plus it opened in 1999.
Not to the public until March 2000.
Touché.
Anyway, how about we talk about London's huge eye now?
Aye aye!
Well, there it is, the London Eye!
This, according to Wikipedia, is a cantilevered observation wheel and is one of the most popular tourist attractions in the United Kingdom, and probably the most expensive Ferris wheel.
And yeah, we mentioned earlier that despite the London Eye opening on New Year's Eve 1999, it didn't open to the public until March 2000 due to a capsule clutch problem.
And each of those 32 capsules represent the 32 London boroughs. They're numbered 1 to 33, excluding the number 13, because something 13 is unlucky. Ooh, come on now.
The London Eye was initially supposed to be a temporary attraction and last until around the mid-2000s, but the operators convinced Lambeth Council to keep it running forever. So, the London Eye was granted permanent status in 2002. And honestly, it was probably for the better. You just can't imagine London today without it. I mean, just look at it. How can you not picture London with this thing?
Funnily enough, the best view to get of the London Eye is actually across the river in Westminster.
Wow, deja vu.
This is the South Bank Centre. Yes, I am starting this section off myself because I just have to mention something really funny about this place.
What is it?
The Royal Festival Hall, which is part of the South Bank Centre, has a singing lift.
What, like it's a lift that plays music? Quite a few lifts do that.
No. This lift sings as you go up it. Watch.
Well, I'll be. Anyway, the South Bank Centre, which is also right by the National Theatre, is the biggest art centre in the UK. The building itself is known for its brutalist architecture. Makes sense, as it did open in the 50s.
The South Bank Centre is, fittingly, located on the south bank of the River Thames, and since it's an art centre, there's lots of events happening here. Comedies, exhibitions, performances, etc.
There's not much else you can really say about the South Bank Centre, other than it's a performance centre. I'll just go for the singing lift. This is the Imperial War Museum, which is actually in the borough of Southwark, but we didn't include it as we spoke about rather a lot in that borough's episode. So, why not do it here? There's actually a few of these dotted around the country, and this is one of them. And, just like most London museums, this one is free. No need to book either.
This museum consists of different galleries showcasing various pieces of history from both the First and Second World Wars, including makeshift trenches you can actually step into in the World War I gallery, where you can discover what the soldiers had to go through.
In the World War II galleries of the museum, you can take a gander at some of the pieces of propaganda from the Nazi Party. On a more serious note though, these galleries have various statements from people that were affected by these deadly wars, including some from people old enough to have gone through such hell, including survivors and war veterans.
Zach, I feel like this is getting a little bit grim.
Well, it's an important part of this country's history, and you can't just ignore history.
Well, I suppose you have a point.
We do have Remembrance Sunday on the 11th of November each year, where we have a 2-minute silence at precisely 11 AM to remember those who died in battle. Another incredibly short landmark segment.
Most of the landmarks in Lambeth and a few other boroughs are just churches. We can't cover mostly churches, as it would just get a bit repetitive. One of them is literally called Christ Church. Like, yes, I'm fairly certain the whole point of a church is Christ.
I personally wanted to cover the Florence Nightingale Museum, which tells the real story of Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp, and her involvement in the Crimean War.
Why didn't we cover it? Was it cut due to time?
No. It was. Anywho, let's move on to transport.
There's only one station in the entirety of the borough named after Lambeth, Lambeth North. However, this station is not really something to write home about. It still looks nice nonetheless.
This station's more your average tube station if anything. If you're looking for something with more grandeur, take Waterloo Station, which was once the busiest railway station in the UK.
Hang on, did you say Waterloo?
Uh-huh.
The TfL tally has shown every tube line except for one. And Waterloo is one of the stations on the missing line. Wait! Does this mean...
Oh yes. Waterloo Station is served by the Bakerloo, Jubilee and Northern lines, including one we have not covered before. Bring it down, Lucas!
I have to do everything around here.
There it is! The Waterloo and City line!
In all its glory! The Waterloo and City line. Some may say it's asinine. Only 2 stations, Forth and Back. It's the line with the least amount of track. The Waterloo and City line. Some may say it's asinine. Only 2 stations, Forth and Back. It's the line with the least amount of track.
Weekdays only.
Corporate turquoise.
Underground depot.
Come feast your eyes.
Only 4 minutes just to go one way. With this, you'll seize the day. The Waterloo and City line. Some may say it's asinine. Only 2 stations, Forth and Back. It's the line with the least amount of track.
Yeah. Oh, have we stopped? Alrighty then.
Phew.
Now that is how you sing about a tube line.
Agreed.
Anyway, back to more serious matters. The Northern line has the most stations in Lambeth, at 6.
And the Jubilee line and our Lord and Saviour, the Waterloo and City line, both have 1.
And the Overground line in this borough is... the Windrush line.
We mentioned earlier about Waterloo Station, which was once the busiest station in the UK, and still is in the top 5 busiest stations. This station is the terminus for South Western Railway, with train services both short and long distance, covering nowhere else but the southwest of England.
This railway takes you to places like Salisbury to Southampton, Portsmouth to Putney, Exeter to Epsom, and Weybridge to Weymouth. There's even services on the Isle of Wight.
South Western Railway was also the first railway to be renationalised on the 25th of May 2025.
Recency.
Other railways such as C2C and Greater Anglia have since followed suit.
Also, Waterloo Station once used to be the terminus for the Eurostar from 1994 until 2007. The final Eurostar departed Waterloo International on the 13th of November 2007, and on the very next day, Eurostar services started from St Pancras International.
The Eurostar terminus was at the far right-hand side of the station. Platforms 20 to 24 were served by it, and the entrance to the Eurostar was on this downstairs part, which is now the sidings, a commercial redevelopment within Waterloo Station.
If you look at the old Eurostar route from a map, you can see how incredibly inconvenient the journey was. It looped all the way around South London. To be fair though, the visual of a Eurostar train at Brixton of all places is kinda funny, I'll admit.
Another problem was the third rail. The Eurostar is designed to be a high-speed train, but lines with the third rail aren't supposed to exceed more than 100 miles per hour.
By the way, if you don't know what a third rail is, it's essentially an extra rail which you can see on some rail lines in London. It's mostly on train lines such as the Tube, DLR and London Overground. The third rail gives electrified trains way more power to move at fast speeds.
So, when they moved the terminus to St Pancras, they added overhead wires, and it runs way faster, even on its own line as well.
The relocation of the Eurostar has made it fit the criteria of high-speed rail service even more than before. It's also freed up congestion in Waterloo, kind of, as it's now only served by local trains.
The Eurostar platforms were eventually converted into South Western Railway platforms, albeit 11 years after the fact, in 2018 and 2019. The platforms now serve trains to Windsor, Weybridge and Reading.
There's no abandoned or disused stations in Lambeth, but there is a bus station.
Vauxhall Bus Station, which is actually intertwined with Vauxhall Tube Station itself. It's also right next to the National Rail Station, but we just spoke about SWR, so we won't repeat ourselves.
The bus station's striking feature is the two cantilevered arms sticking out of it. These arms contain 167 solar panels and power a third of the bus station's electricity. These arms have given it the nickname of the ski jump.
This bus station was actually under threat of demolition. Lambeth Council wanted to demolish this bus station and replace it with luxury tower blocks. In 2020, the demolition was approved, but the bus station is still here, so it's really anyone's guess what will happen to this bus station.
Also, right next to the bus station is probably the weirdest thing you'll ever see at a bus station. A public urinal. Right there. Just out in the open. And it probably smells terrible. We did not bother checking.
Oh yes! This is why people watch Borough Bugs. Such amazing structures. This urinal deserves World Heritage status. This is why people tune in. Am I right, Zach?
No. Nice sarcasm, though. This is absolutely foul. But... it's better than having people doing it on a building.
Fair.
Well, I guess this is what you're getting out of Borough Bugs. Landmarks, trains, trivia, and toilets. High-class quality right here, everybody.
Don't forget boats. Vauxhall has 3 river bus piers.
St George's Wharf Pier, serving Vauxhall, is served by RBs 1 and 6.
London Eye Pier, serving Waterloo, is also served by RBs 1 and 6, as well as 2 River Tour routes.
There's also Festival Pier, which is only served by a River Tour route. According to Google, this pier is permanently closed, despite it being very clearly open. I think we've exhausted enough transport trivia for Lambeth.
Speaking of trivia, let's move onwards.
Lambeth was comprised of technically 2 metropolitan boroughs. The borough to the east was the original Lambeth, and the one to the left was actually a smaller part of the original Wandsworth. If you remember from the previous episode, Wandsworth split in 2. Lambeth ended up having the smaller half, which contained Clapham and Streatham. In 1965, these 1 1/5 boroughs merged, creating the London Borough of Lambeth.
Lambeth has the highest population of gay/lesbian people in London. In 2017, the percentage of people who identified as such was 5.5%. Vauxhall is also home to the Royal Vauxhall Tavern, the oldest surviving gay venue in London.
Lambeth is twinned with 2 other places, Vincennes in France, which the Metropolitan Borough was also twinned with. It's also twinned with Brooklyn, New York, in the United States.
The population of Lambeth in 1801 was at around 34,000. In 1901, the population decupled in size to around 357,000. Unfortunately, the population does not get bigger from here. In 2024, the population is just under 317,000. It did get bigger before the Second World War happened, though.
Lambeth is home to the MI6 building at Vauxhall Cross. This building is the headquarters of the UK's Foreign Intelligence Agency. If you don't know what that means, something to do with spies. This building has been given some hilariously stupid nicknames over time, such as Vauxhall Trollop, the Ziggurat, Babylon on Thames, and even Legoland.
Wow, there's still spies out there.
Of course there are. Some people have got to go out there and keep everything in order.
Imagine if you were a spy. Do you think you'd be able to pull it off?
My name is Atwood. Zach Atwood.
Nah, too flashy.
Why 777?
I don't know, I like 77.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zach and Vinbee, the Borough Bugs. Together they review the boroughs of London. From Westminster to Islington, from Hillingdon to Havering. They find out what is there and then they show it to you.
Morning all. If it isn't any trouble, would you mind if I introduce a friend of mine?
All right.
Sure.
Oh, splendid! This is Dianthus.
Ah! Oh, my nectar.
Yes, this is Dianthus. They're a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Whoa, how'd you do that?
I don't know. It just happens whenever we hug.
Bug hug. Oh, it's time!
Since when did you have a watch?
Sorry about that, everybody. Welcome to Borough Bugs, the show where we research each of the London boroughs and then dump all of our knowledge onto you.
Hello, I'm Vinbee the Bumblebee, and I still have a nice warm cup of nectar.
And I'm Zach the Butterfly, and I spilled mine all over the floor.
Not to worry, here you are.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
And this is Borough Bugs.
Vera, is there any particular reason why you brought your friend in today?
Well, I was checking the episode plan and found out that today's episode is Lewisham.
So?
Well, Dianthus here was originally from Lewisham.
Oh, a local. This should make things more interesting.
Yup, I'm Dianthus the Beetle, and I'm originally from Lewisham itself. And I also really love this show, so it makes it so much better that I'm going to be part of the show's history. Can I press the red button? Oh, please, 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 please.
If you like.
Yippee! Today's borough is... Lewisham.
What parts of Lewisham were you from, Dianthus?
A log.
Okay, then? Actually, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, looks like it's time for the overview.
Oh, I miss Lewisham. Sadly, I don't live there anymore. Now I live in the Midlands.
Oh my god, same! Twin!
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 You don't live in the north.
I'd like to say something. A lot of places in Lewisham are incredibly multicultural. The borough's population consists of people from a huge variety of nationalities. It even won the title of London Borough of Culture in 2022.
Ooh.
I think we should take a look at the landmarks now. There's one in particular I'm really eager to talk about, and it's the first one coming up.
Alright, let's.
This is the Horniman Museum. This museum is located in Forest Hill and opened in 1901 by Frederick John Horniman, who inherited his father's tea business so he could pursue his passion for collecting things, and thus, the museum came to be. This museum is home to a large collection of taxidermied animals.
What does that mean?
It means when you take the skin of a dead animal and stuff it up to make it look like it's a real animal statue. Look at this one of a walrus.
Ugh.
This museum also has an aquarium on the basement floor. Fishy, 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 fishy.
Oh, can I mention something? This museum has an enormous collection of musical instruments. There's thousands! And it really shows how much musical instruments have changed over time. Just look at these weird ancient guitar things.
I love all the different instruments here, and personally, I prefer the percussion, particularly the drums. And I'd like mine back, please, Lúcás!
You said you were eager to talk about this place. How so?
Oh, right. Well, this place has a butterfly house. Look, so many butterflies!
Oh, that's why you wanted to talk about this place.
Since butterflies like to live in hot climates, the inside of the butterfly house is very hot, giving them the perfect place to thrive.
Oh, can we please go here later?
Maybe.
Yes! This is Blackheath. This heath is actually managed by both the councils of Lewisham and Greenwich.
Blackheath is 211.5 acres, or 85.58 hectares.
Nobody knows what a hectare is.
This makes it one of the largest areas of common land in London.
Blackheath is incredibly flat and incredibly open. If you travel through here by bus, it's an incredibly scenic experience. By the way, if you look at Blackheath from the air, it looks like a massive game of frustration.
For our American viewers, it looks like a massive game of trouble.
And for our Finnish viewers, Sinauta valta kimbal.
What?
You know, I think this is the only open space in London to have bus stops directly inside of it, rather than slightly outside of the park.
Come to think of it, you're right. I've never seen any other bus routes in London go directly through a park. At least not one this flat or big.
You want to know what else is flat and big?
The Netherlands?
Well, yeah, I suppose that works too. Lewisham has got a lot of interesting smaller structures, something you don't see often in places in London. Either that or you're not looking hard enough.
In Catford, appropriately, there's a large cat structure on the sign for the Catford Centre. It's become a tourist attraction just because of how bizarre it is.
Meow. In St John's, an old phone box has been converted into a library, and there's actually a few of these around the UK. Do you live near one? You best hope there's a phone book in at least one of those.
And these two houses have been painted in a way so that they look like two people's bodies. This mural has earned the nickname of his and hers.
This is Hilly Fields, a park near Ladywell. This park may not seem like anything substantial, but within the park, there's something quite interesting to see.
In 2000, a stone circle was erected in the park, made out of 12 shadow-casting stones, to mark the new millennium.
If you think about it, it's sort of like London's very own miniature Stonehenge. Albeit, this one's not ancient, but it's well on its way to having a midlife crisis.
The stone circle also acts as a sundial. When the sun shines down onto the stones, and they cast a shadow, and then it points in the direction where the hour... It doesn't matter. The point is, it can be used to tell the time if you so want to.
By the way, if you do decide to come here, take a look at the view. It's honestly kind of nice.
Are you two liking Lewisham so far?
Yeah, I'm enjoying this.
It's pretty cool.
I'm not, annoying you guys, am I?
No, not really.
Yay!
Anyway, Lewisham certainly does have a lot of interesting structures, and parks that look like board games.
Muuten, emme suosittele minkään lautapelin jättiversion pelaamista keskellä kireistä tietä.
Yes.
Anyways, let's take a look at the transport of Lewisham. Obviously, one of the main stations of Lewisham is Lewisham Station.
For scale, Lewisham Station is very medium-sized. Wow.
Indeed. This station is in both Zones 2 and 3, and is the southern terminus for the DLR. It's also a through station for South Eastern Railway services towards central London and various suburbs around South East London, as well as Dartford.
Can I bring down the TfL tally?
Sure.
Yippee!
Wow, the Overground wins today with 6 stations, and the DLR only has 2. I honestly thought there were more DLR stations in this borough. I suppose not. Also, might as well show which Overground line it is. It's all the Windrush line.
Oh yeah, this is the first time we're covering the DLR in the programme. We might as well explain it. The DLR is a light railway spanning all across East London, hence the name being an acronym for Docklands Light Railway.
The DLR has been split into 3 routes, all coloured a different shade of teal.
The line, which looks vaguely like the actual colour of the DLR, starts in Beckton and goes to both Stratford International and Tower Gateway.
The line with the lighter teal colour starts in Woolwich Arsenal and also goes to Stratford International. However, this one goes to Bank instead.
And the line with the darkest shade of teal starts down in good old Lewisham and heads up towards Bank too, but only goes as far as the main Stratford station instead. Sometimes it will go to Stratford International during peak times. Very interesting.
The darker line also has an interesting service pattern with West India Quay Station, but that's a story for another time.
What national rail services run through this borough?
Well, we already mentioned South Eastern, but alongside that, you have Southern Railway and Thameslink, and by extension, the Overground. 2 stations on this line were once part of the East London line, New Cross and New Cross Gate, which are so close to each other you can walk between each of them in just under 10 minutes. But we do have something else interesting to talk about regarding New Cross Station.
New Cross Station is one of the few national rail stations in London, barring the core section of the Elizabeth line, to have lettered platforms. Platforms A, B and C serve South Eastern trains, and Platform D serves the London Overground. This was done to avoid confusion with New Cross Gate Station, just up the road, which uses numbered platforms.
Imagine you arrive at platform A here and you just say, "Hey," get it? A.
Okay. Well, another station that has lettered platforms in London is Waterloo East, likely done for the same reason, to avoid confusion with London Waterloo Station.
Lewisham hasn't got any bus stations, but it does have a rather unique bus route here.
Yep. Before we talk about it though, we need to discuss the Superloop!
The Superloop is a huge loop of buses encircling outer London, all numbered like numbers on a clock, with a few exceptions.
SLs 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9 and 10 are the radial routes that encircle the capital. SL2 stops at the Woolwich Ferry, as there's no way for it to get to the other side of the river. Bus routes don't usually run on the ferry.
And SL3 stops at Thamesmead, about 4 kilometres in the opposite direction.
SLs 4, 6, 8, 11 and soon to be opened, 12, are the orbital routes, not a part of the actual loop.
Another orbital route is the BL1. This is the route we're going to talk about.
BL1? BL1? Huh? Is that funny?
Not really.
Oh.
The BL1, affectionately called the Baker Loop, 1 is a technically temporary bus route in which its whole gimmick is that it's meant to follow where the Bakerloo line would go if it were extended.
The places it stops at include Waterloo, Elephant and Castle, Burgess Park, Old Kent Road, New Cross Gate and Lewisham.
Like I just said, this route follows the Bakerloo line extension that's been promised for years. Literally nobody knows if it's ever being built.
Why don't they just build it? What's stopping them?
Elementary, my dear Dianthus. The extension is an incredibly ambitious project, and there's 3 factors holding them back.
1. They need to get money. Extending a train line is an incredibly expensive venture, and in 2017, it was estimated that the extension would cost between £5 billion and £8 billion. Compare that to the Northern Line extension, where it only cost just over £1 billion, mainly due to the smaller scale of that extension.
2. The geology of South London. The tough soil in South London is a lot harder to tunnel through than the clay soil in North London, making tube construction a far more difficult job.
3. Other priorities regarding the trains themselves. The 1972 tube stock is now over 50 years old as of 2026, and it's part of the reason why the Piccadilly line is getting new trains, as those trains are starting to show their age as well.
Sadly, it's safe to say that the Bakerloo line extension is not going to happen for the time being, and they even want to extend it further down to Beckenham and Hayes. It does make you wonder if it's ever going to happen at all.
Well, I'll go and build it myself. I'll show them.
No, you won't.
Yeah, you're right, sorry. Trivia!
The London Borough of Lewisham was made up of the two metropolitan boroughs, Lewisham and Deptford. When the boroughs were merged in 1965, the boroughs were merged into Lewisham.
Since then, the boundary of Lewisham has remained unchanged. Some parts have switched between this borough and Greenwich, but if you want to read about it yourself, do it later.
Education in Lewisham isn't very good. Lewisham is the third worst performing borough for level 3 qualifications. If you don't know what that means, it's to do with A-level grades. It's essentially a diploma. In 2019, the percentage of 19-year-olds in Lewisham who lack a level 3 qualification is an alarming 42%.
Lewisham's population in 1801 was just under 17,000. 100 years later in 1901, the population shot up to 217,000. In 2024, the population has increased to 301,000. Another increase in population. This is either good or bad depending how you look at it.
In 2023 and 2024, Lewisham was reported to have a higher poverty rate than the citywide average of 26%. Lewisham's poverty rate is an unfortunate 28%. If you're wondering which boroughs have the highest poverty rate, it's both Westminster and Camden at 42%. Can I not be the one to read out these facts? These ones are a bit depressing.
Honestly, it's hard to find a lot of facts for London boroughs that aren't overly negative. A lot of central London suffers from quite a bit of deprivation. Outer London's a victim of this as well.
You know, I didn't really think Lewisham was that terrible when I used to live here. But honestly, every place in London has flaws. Nowhere is perfect, nowhere is utopia. It's London. Sure, there's obviously rubbish stuff in the city, but there's also nice stuff too. I think that just makes London more interesting to experience, right?
I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, if London was just this perfect city with nothing going wrong in it, it would just feel like there's a sinister reason behind why. A city needs varying quality to thrive, otherwise it'd feel very boring and very samey.
Yeah. Well, I've got to go now. Come here, you two.
Whoa! Wow!
Vera, I'm going home now.
Oh, you heading home now?
Yep. Bye-bye. I'll be back for Christmas.
Mate, I'm feeling all tingly from that hug.
Same. I think we should do that more often.
I don't normally do hugs.
Fair enough.